From the studio of your mom's basement comes a podcast by two idiots in a revolving door of legends and has-beens from the oldest university in Texas. This is Purple, Gold, and Getting Old.
We have a really cool episode coming up, talking to Colton Hedrick and Cameron Roucloux about the music department. And last episode we learned about a underground fraternity. Well, today we get to talk about a legit fraternity and a choose your own adventure degree plan that they get to go through some pretty tumultuous times in the music department. And then we get a little bit in the deep water with why, even though they both grew up Baptist and went to a Baptist university, they're no longer Baptist. They joined your side over with the Methodists.
That's right. They came to the dark side.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. I'm excited for us to get into it. I just want to note before we get into our episode that we are now legit. We're an actual podcast because we are on Spotify right now.
Yeah.
I'm working on getting us on iTunes. Not quite yet. We'll get there. So hopefully that'll be a lot easier for y'all to listen to. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing, share it for us. That would be super helpful. Rate, review us on Spotify. That would be awesome.
And if you don't like it, share it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So hope y'all enjoy the episode.
We're rolling.
Rolling. And we got through 2 seconds, so we get a dolphin squeal already. I love this.
So I want to share something with y'all before we really get going. I found something in like
You're gonna share your heart with us?
Well, I'm gonna share something from like the depths
Bible.
of 1990s evangelicalism. So this is gonna be really crazy and depressing. I'm reading this. This is real. So I found a board game in the basement of the youth group room called "What Would Jesus Do?" The board game.
Oh no!
And so there's all these cards that have
like profit off of himself.
Yeah, there's all these questions about like what would you do to prompt like spiritual, like fun family night with youth group. Like, yeah, I think this would be the Christian thing to do. That like, it makes them have some fun conversations to like talk about like godly things, right? And so I pulled one card out, like, okay, let's see what these questions are like. I'm not lying. This is the card I'm reading verbatim. You are the mother of a mentally retarded, sexually active teenager. Despite your efforts to educate and protect her, she has already been pregnant once and you fear it will happen again. Her physician and counselor both recommend that she have a surgical implant, which would prevent pregnancy. You are adamant against the procedure. You, A, override her wishes and make her take the procedure. B, take no action, but take away her independence and make sure someone is with her at all times. C, refuse the procedure. It's not the right choice.
And your answer was?
So what do you think, little Johnny?
What is on the ages what through what on the side of the box? What was this recommended for?
It said it's a game for families. So...
Oh man, wait, am I the only one that brought like Gatorade to a real party?
I've got coffee.
How very Unity of you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Wow. The answer is obviously that you have someone with her at all times.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's so many more. That's my absolute favorite one. That's why I keep it in my office, because it's a cherished reminder of what we came out of in the 90s and why
I knew where this was going. When you brought up that game, I was like, I think I've seen this card.
I think I might have shared it with you
before. We take like a 30-second clip of every episode and just throw it out on the interwebs as a preview. I think there should just be a no context you reading that card as the preview.
Yeah. No, it needs
mentally retarded, sexually active daughter who's been pregnant once already.
Y'all, I'm sweating.
Oh, well, that was an amazing way to start this podcast. So I want to get started first with. There's like some interesting connections here of how everybody sort of knows each other. I met Colton because we got hired at the same church, which I'm sure we'll get to. We will get to that, maybe. And we got voted in the same day. And it was actually kind of funny. I didn't realize he was going for a different job. I thought they were bringing us both in and like, okay, we're deciding between the hippie here with the long hair and this guy over here. And I'm like sizing up my competition, like this is really uncomfortable for me. And then I realized they're voting us both in. And so, yeah, that's how I get to know him.
I remember standing in the hallway. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Hey,
And I was like
can
trying to like
you get your
figure it out.
Longview internet under control so we can like hear you?
Sorry, I don't have the greatest internet.
Living out there in East Texas.
Yeah.
Cameron, where are you in from? You're in Temple right now, right?
Yeah. Yep. We're in Temple.
Cool.
All right. And so what I want to know, and I met Garrett my freshman year because Garrett was everywhere and did everything. So
I'm weird.
how did Garrett and Cameron meet? That's what I'm interested in here.
I don't know, just like UMHB, just like being around. But like, I think Tyler, you and I, when did you come into UMHB?
So, well, I came in and out a lot.
I think, did we start the same year?
No, so I started in 08. Yeah.
Oh, so you were there a year before me.
Okay, yeah. So you're like, there's a lot of people that were at UMHB like this where I'm really not certain when we met because like I kind of knew who you were, but like I didn't know you. And then like, so I feel like we really actually met at a Colton's poker night, to be honest.
Yeah,
I
feel like because I was church music, so like I was kind of in the Christian ministry building some. And then I don't know, Garrett was just like around and always had a cowboy hat on.
Okay.
That makes really into
He must have been at the football games.
I thought you were closer in like age and class to Colton, so I had no clue how y'all would have crossed paths. But no, we're closer.
So Colton was like I don't know. I guess I was like I was the second person Colton met at his UMHB tour. The first person. That's between but yeah, I don't know. He was on a music school tour and he was gonna be church music, and his mom was like, "Will you take care of my son here at UMHB?" And I was like, "Oh yes, ma'am. Like we sure will." I was like, "This guy seems normal." So
okay, cool.
Cameron, I wore this just because I knew what class. I remembered what class. It's the only like class shirt I have. So it's the 09-10 shirt.
That's my freshman year.
Garrett, before we started recording, you said you had an interesting story about how you met Cameron.
Oh yeah, so not necessarily about meeting, but kind of. So you know how like you meet somebody in passing real quick, or you meet people in crowds. Like you'll catch I'm good with names, but like I'm better with like, same. Oh, I remember that face around campus. And so I think I barely met Cameron in passing, but didn't really know him yet. And so I should preface this whole episode by saying, Colton, you said something about being nervous earlier. I was nervous because the previous episodes all came from an era where I was either a freshman or sophomore. So freshman year, I was just like the nerd who followed the rules and could do no wrong. And 2.5 years of college was like the good guy. And then like my last year and a half, it was like, I'll put it this way. They wouldn't give me a part at stunt night unless I played Voldemort. That'll tell you what public perception was. And so that's what this era comes in. And I was studying with somebody one night, and this girl was just like, "Hey, I just texted my buddy Cameron. I want to see if you want to come over while we're studying." I'm like, "Cool." I didn't know who Cameron was. And she's like, "I'm telling him I'm at your place." I'm like, "Cool." And then she started laughing. I was like, "What's up?" She's like, Cameron says, "Garrett Smith, that guy is a major douche." and,
oh no!
And I was like, I get that a lot. So I didn't think anything of it. And so then later, like I actually meet Cameron and never thought of that. And I was like, yeah, Cameron's a cool dude. And one day it just randomly clicked. I'm like, that's the guy. And then like, I thought it was really funny, but I've never like gotten to tell you that story. I was like, I finally put that together and thought it was hilarious.
Early college Cameron was also a major douche. So
amazing.
You're not.
I never held it against you. I actually thought it was funny.
Well, one of the first questions we typically ask guests is, how they even found UMHB, why they would have chosen this former all women's school in the middle of Central Texas. So Cameron, you got there first. What brought you to UMHB?
So my dad has been in full-time ministry in the Southern Baptist Church for, I don't know, like ever, like 40 years, like full-time. So I grew up outside of Austin in Pflugerville. I'm from Pflugerville, not from Austin. That pisses me off when people are like, I'm from Austin, but they were from Cedar Park. I'm from Pflugerville. That's where I grew up. My dad's been the pastor of worship, associate pastor there for like 25 or more years now. So, I mean, for a long time, like it was kind of like, you know, if you were Baptist, you know, that was a good thing to do, was go to a Baptist school. That was not necessarily pushed on me by my parents. But once I decided I wanted to major in music, and specifically at the time, I thought I wanted to do full-time church music, just like my dad. I knew that took out any public school. So, you know, there was a lot of people from my youth group being like, you know, 45 minutes, an hour away that went there. So I already knew some people that were at UMHB at the time. And there had been a ton of people, like just in my growing up years, that went to UMHB from my church. And then my dad was like, yeah, the One Voice had come and sang at our church several times. And my dad was like, yeah, I knew the guy that was the choir director there, you know, a couple guys ago. And he was always really impressed with them and that kind of stuff. So that's really the only place that I kind of put my eggs in that basket. I went and auditioned, and I knew I wanted to do church music. So I knew that was no state schools, and I didn't really look anywhere else. It was kind of like I'd get in there and have enough scholarship money, or I don't know, like
Gotcha.
never really got that far. So that was kind of, you know, it made sense. Like it was far enough away from home, but it wasn't too far, you know. I thought it was a nice campus. Like I had the guy that was the choir director at the time had been a region clinician whenever I was in high school, for one of our region choirs, and I really liked him. And he's actually the one that kind of had recruited me. And then once I got there, I auditioned for One Voice, and like I met Dr. Crosby now. You know, so it was just like kind of, it made sense. I didn't really need to look anywhere else. It worked out financially, I guess, you know, not too much debt. I don't know, that's a relative term, I guess.
You are the first person I've ever heard say that UMHB worked out financially. That's
Yes.
amazing.
I mean, like relatively, I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of friends, Colton, and others that like we compare our student debt. So it's like, who has the less student debt, you know? So I think it was like a combination of, it wasn't like too outlandishly expensive yet.
Yeah.
And I got like a decent amount of, you know, student aid. But my parents were like, oh yeah, we're not loans, like you can take loans. And now I'm like, good for you. Like, I'm glad you take out loans. But so yeah, I mean, it was like, honestly, like my sister went to a state school, and I think like we ended up with about the same amount of student debt in the end. I don't know that it's necessarily the case anymore. You know, I think when I came in, it was like 24 or so a year, which is like not anymore. So, and also like I had some other friends that were going there. So there were a couple guys that I played football with in high school that were going there. One of my high school best friends was going there. Like we roomed together our freshman year. So, you know, it was just kind of like a lot of things that, you know, it made sense. Like it wasn't, I just didn't feel the need to really look a whole lot anywhere else. But I think the initial connection was like the kind of the Baptist culture, and, you know, those connections there are, and the major, not, you know, not having church music at a public school. So that really narrowed my scope. At the time, I was a very good Baptist boy.
I think that's one of the subjects I want to get into on what happened to everybody's baptism, but we'll get there. Colton, how did you find UMHB?
Real quick, sorry, before Colton goes, I do have one quick question for Cameron. What is more annoying, when people call Pflugerville Austin, or when people from not around the area call it Pflugerville? Like New Braunfels.
Yeah, right. They love that one with the S. I really hate it when people like they're from Round Rock or Leander and they say they're from Austin. I'm like, no, you're from Round Rock. you went to Round Rock High School, like you're not from Austin. The end. So that's a big pet peeve of mine.
I feel like that was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
how'd you get to UMHB?
Oh, sorry, it's your turn, Colton.
Yeah, sorry, Cameron. I hate to interrupt your story. So there are some definite similarities between Cameron's story and mine, and there are some big differences. I was also church music throughout, and that's what I'm doing today. I'm full-time ministry, full-time church music. I went in for that as my freshman year, never changed my major. It's what I did all the way through. It was a rodeo. And yeah, the way I found UMHB was Google, and I found it, and I was like, this is fine, and I went there.
Nice. That was
that's the most straightforward story I've ever heard.
So the next thing I want to know, because I've heard, bits and pieces of this story, and it's why I wanted to have y'all guys on, is y'all both came in and you wanted a major in music. Colton, you specifically church music, you just said.
He started.
Cameron too. Okay.
I finished my bachelor's is in church music.
Okay. So what was the program like as you came in? And then what was it like as you ended? That's what I want to know. No, and I know that's a lot. So y'all just take that and run with it as you.
Okay. I'll start because I was there before Colton.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I came in, Dr. Stansberry was the church music chair my freshman year. And he had been there a long time. And he was like super smart guy, super nice. Like I really enjoyed taking, I think he taught intro to church music and I don't know, congregational song or something like that. Like a very good speaker, like very personable. But let's see, the textbook that we used my freshman year, I think was called Jubilate 2. And it was written by Donald Usted, who was the organist for George Beverly Shea, who was Billy Graham's music guy during the heyday of the Billy Graham Crusades.
Wow. I followed that whole chain. And when we arrived, I'm like, oh, okay, there it is.
in the fall of 2009, our textbook got us to 1980-ish. Let's see, at the time, I know my freshman year, the degree plan that I started on, handbells was a required ensemble for 2 semesters.
Very
my freshman year, Nick Arbuckle and another one of the piano performance students were the only 2 students in the handbell ensemble. And
wait, it was just 2 of them dueling with handbells?
Well, I mean,
I've heard of dueling banjos. I've never heard of dueling.
Nick Arbuckle could pull it off.
Yeah. There are people that play handbells, 1 or 2 people. Yeah. So at our Christmas concert, they're playing handbells, just the 2 of them. So that's where it was when I came in.
Yeah.
Was and not that far in, I was this is, heavy on the traditional, heavy on the, for a long time, that was what it, that was how things were. In my lifetime at my church, I don't even think that we started a contemporary service till I was in high school. Wow. So it still was kind of not super, not relative anymore, but it was pretty dated. Yeah. So that's kind of where that was. And that textbook was just kind of a history of, congregational music and, that kind of stuff like that. So, which I don't even know if it got to the 80s. I think we got to the late 70s and, they're Keith Green's really cool, the new thing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, right. So, at the time it was, oh man, there were not very many of us.
Yeah.
I know Nick was his class was ahead of me. I'm trying to remember. I know nobody else graduated from my class in church music.
Wow.
But that's pretty typical for music school that not many people make it out. So, but there were a handful of church music majors. So let's see, Dr. Stansberry retired, I think at the end of my freshman year. Oh, no, that's it. Garrett, that's what I was going to say. Preach was in one of my classes. It was me, Preach, and Nick Arbuckle.
That sounds like an amazing class.
With Dr. Stansberry. It was a blast, man. Like really, that combination of people and characters it was a good time. We had a good time. Yeah.
I don't think Colton has had the opportunity to meet Preach before, but
Brandon Blackstreet,
boy, that is
legend.
an experience. Yeah.
Legend.
Yeah.
So he retired, and then we didn't have a church music department chair for my sophomore year. And then also I think the department chair left after that year. So they brought David Guest back to teach a couple of my classes my sophomore year, who he had been the choir director or the director of choral activities at UMHB, kind of in its like golden era for choral music, like in the early 2000s. And he had left to do doctoral work. Anyway, he came back, and I was really hoping that they were going to bring him in to be the church music chair, but like he didn't have an actual degree in church music, I think, or he didn't have a post-bachelor's degree in church music, so he wasn't really in the running. And then they basically started a search they wanted to kill two birds with one stone. They wanted to hire a church music person who was also going to be the music department chairperson.
So you mentioned like a lot of this turnover that's happening in the department. And one of the things that Colton has described to me is that his degree plan was like a choose your own adventure book.
Kind of.
So Colton, kind of walk me through that, like how you came in and what it was like. And then what happened as all of these people started leaving and it just kind of fell apart, it seems like.
Well, before Colton goes, I was going to say UMHB at this time is really, I mean, we're all there. I mean, like the master plan is being revealed, yeah, and they're really starting to try and up their game on the whole scale.
Yeah. And
it was kind of like a lot of these, some of the old guard that had been in the music department for a while were, I mean, Dr. Stansberg, he had to be 75 or 80. Yeah. Like, you know, I mean, he had been there for a long time. So there hadn't
2009 was just a culture shift altogether at that place.
Yeah, right. So,
yeah.
I mean, there hadn't been an opportunity for them really to like have somebody, because he had been the department chair, and then he'd been the church music chair, and then he'd been so there hadn't really been an opportunity for them to have someone come in and be the church music person, like kind of from outside of the UMHB reach, you know. And so they started the search, and Dr. Humphrey was like, I mean, he was so much better than anybody else that, you know, they would do like guest lectures for us and kind of survey us and ask us what we thought. And like, it was, I mean, at least in my opinion and like my friends, it was like, yeah, no, this guy is like young, and it's a pendulum, right? Everything is a pendulum. So
Colton, it is the guy that Cameron's talking about, the guy that I met at Priest for Pints, in Salado.
Yes. Please elaborate, because even though I know what that is, I think our audience should.
Yeah, so Priest for Pints was something that it might still be going on, I don't know, at Barrow Brewery in Salado, which is just it's a time and a place for a bunch of pastors from around Bell County to kind of come together and drink some beers and just kind of like talk about topical issues of church stuff and just kind of complain about their own churches too, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Tyler. That's actually a PCUSA Presbyterian like mission standard, and it's actually up here in Longview. It's
cool.
Yeah, it's in several cities.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Yes, no, that's a good transition point. And Cameron, I just want to make sure: do you yield the rest of your time? Can I get in here? No. I don't want to interrupt you, Dad. I know you got a lot going on.
Yeah, sure. Go for it, Paul.
All right, thank you. Okay, yeah. So, Dr. Humphrey,
Yeah.
Man, this is peeling back some onion layers here. You're correct, Tyler. That is the guy that you met briefly that was a long time ago in Salado. Super neat guy. He is, if not the main reason, one of the main reasons that I even went to UMHB, because I stumbled upon the church music degree. And this is going back to our first question. I literally was like, well, it's like $5 cheaper than Baylor in Waco. And it's also 30 minutes further away from where I grew up. So I was like, yeah, I mean, let's check it out. So I applied.
And they say guitar.
And it said guitar, yeah. And much like Cameron, I applied to one school. I had no backup plan. And I was recruited extremely heavily by Dr. Humphrey. So it would have been that would have been spring of 13. So how long would have he been there? A couple years?
I think he had been there 1 year. I think that year that you came was still his first year, because I think your freshman year was his second year.
He was recruiting, like he was trying to build a program.
Either one or two.
Was he trying to make it more contemporary?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
And it was looking sexy. Like it was looking like a really good program. Yeah. Again, I didn't know anything because I'm from Timbuktu, and I was like, everyone listens to B.B. King and plays guitar in church. I haven't done the classical music thing. But I was sold on it, and my class was the biggest class that the music department had in a very, very long time. I think our freshman theory class was over 50 kids.
Wow.
And that's
so
unheard of. We
things we're
graduated
looking
with
at
less than 10.
Yeah,
but
just for context, my freshman theory class, there was one section of theory because we had like 25 people.
Wow.
And of those 25 people, 5 of us graduated.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were 50 and less than 10 graduated.
Is that mostly logistical, like because of the program changing, or is it just because people change their majors? People
get in there and they have no idea what they're getting into. And I don't mean this as a slight to Colton. I mean this as a compliment to Colton. A lot of times people like Colton, who he was not in choir or orchestra or band in high school, didn't read music, likes music, is very passionate about it. Obviously, he's a hell of a guitar player, but most music schools are going to look at that and be like, well, you don't know who Mozart is, so you're not welcome. Humphrey was the opposite of that. He was like, whatever, we'll teach you. You can learn about Bach and Mozart, but like you're the kind of people we want. So he was, and there was, that was not always a very popular opinion within the academic circle of the music school, because it's more work. It's more, you have to teach people, and the student has to commit to a level of artistry and also of studying. Like Colton busted his butt to learn to read music theory, oral skills, like music history. Because the church music degree is, we take all the same fundamentals as every other music degree.
Yeah.
So it's no fluff degree. It is a bachelor's. It's a Bachelor of Music degree.
Well, I remember Colton's senior recital thing that he did, where he like just jammed out like Stevie Ray Vaughan in the Walton Chapel, and that was like, I was like, that is a level of cool I will never attain.
Quick question on this recital. I don't know if it was really Stevie Ray Vaughan or just something that sounded like it, but as I mentioned before, the culture shift at UMHB my senior year took like a severe 180. It was just like, it wasn't even the same school anymore. And the same buildings, it was just weird. And so that kind of music was not necessarily the most popular on campus that I found. How was that received when you did that? Because I was told, and I said this on the last episode, I was once called unchristlike for driving a truck and wearing boots. So I'm just trying to imagine how that recital went.
Yeah, the white suburban evangelicalism subculture is strong there, very strong. But no, it's an excellent question, Garrett. So, to give you a little context, if you are in the music department, your big senior practicum, your big senior project for people in the music department, the equivalent of that is a recital, and it's a big deal. You have to go before most of the music faculty before and get it approved, and it's basically the final stamp of like, yeah, we feel okay that this musician has our name and is out working. It's American Idol, but it's $30,000 a year on the line.
It's the culmination of 4 years of work.
Yeah,
I mean, every semester whatever your primary instrument is. So for Colton and I, that was voice. We literally take a class and we get a grade based on how we perform. So if you sound bad, you don't get an A. Yeah. It's like, yeah. So, I mean, the recital to get to that point means that you've done everything else to get there.
So were the professors kind of accepting of that style of music, kind of doing the bluesy guitar stuff?
Yeah, so the short answer is no.
Okay.
So, and this may need to go back to the previous question, but switching to this contemporary culture, or attempting to, I should say, the faculty didn't really know what to do with that. They had no experience with it.
Some of them do.
They had no experience with it personally. And one thing I'm passionate about musically is blues music. It's the reason I'm a guitar player. It's the reason I approach music in general. I would set aside time outside of classes to learn things like the history of the Delta slide guitar, and try to kind of pick apart how systemic racism kept the guitar out of the church for 100 years, and really try to marry kind of an American music. And basically, if I had a thesis for that recital, it was, we're trying to do church music in America, and our music education systems are still European, because anything that is not European and classical in an education system is basically deemed lesser. And the short reason behind that is systemic racism. We can go ahead and check the racism box for this podcast. You're welcome. So anyway, so they really changed the wording around what was acceptable for a recital during my 4 years, because you had a class of contemporary musicians coming through for the first time. So I had all these parameters, like I could only accompany myself while I was singing for like 2 songs.
Wow.
But this had to be an hour. I had to have a song that was representational of certain time periods, maybe, or certain styles. It was very confusing. Luckily, this woman is a saint. Lisa Clement was my voice.
Shout out to Miss Clement, the real OG.
Dude, she is one of the reasons I got through that program.
Same.
She was my voice teacher all 8 semesters. Yeah, all 8 semesters. And she took me by the hand and was patient. And by the end of the program, I knew what I was doing. And she allowed me to prepare repertoire for around an hour for this recital for first grade for the jury of vocal professors. And then she allowed me to take an intermission after that graded portion and do another hour of music that was unhindered by the program. I could do anything I wanted. And that was the last time they allowed anyone to do that. Nice. It was very rock and roll. It was very good, but I wanted it to be academic. So I started the night with kind of a TED Talk. And I basically, I used the Voyager mission, where they sent the golden record into space with recordings of Earth and music, right? And my whole little talk was like, Bach is on there, and so is Blind Willie Johnson. Yeah. And we know who Bach is, but we don't know who Blind Willie Johnson is. And for American music, Blind Willie Johnson is a forefather, just like many other Europeans. So anyway, I talked about it. I gave history on it, and then I started with really old slide guitar, Delta blues, a cappella, work songs, and went into like the electric guitar and Chicago blues.
Cool.
So that was fun, and it was a little frowned upon by many people, and the audio-visual team in the chapel where it was happening somehow didn't get it recorded.
No, that.
Yes. Don't get me started
Yeah.
on many episodes of the sound booth.
So we started
Nothing's
off,
an accident.
and I asked Cameron,
So
oh, sorry, go.
No, I was going to say you have to put a tinfoil hat on to kind of think about why that happened. They recorded every Wednesday. They knew what was going on. They knew how to do it. They recorded the first half that was graded, and then magically they didn't get the rest. Luckily, my best friend and roommate all through college, Zachary Thompson's mother, has some footage on a camera, and I was able to piece a lot of it together. But no, that was a beautiful time. That was a cool time, and it was a neat way that really just Lisa Clement allowed me one night to basically say what I had to say.
That's cool.
You pulled a Back to the Future where it's like, you may not be ready for that yet, but your kids are going to love it.
Yeah. She is a true educator.
Yeah.
Like they started this stuff, this commercial voice style. She had never taught like that. All of our 99% of voice faculty are taught in a classical style. And she took that by the horns and she learned how to teach us. You know, I mean, like she is a true, an educator in the truest form.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody got to do that after Colton, by the way.
So that's kind of where my next question is leading. So Cameron, you come in and it's very like traditional and choral,
right?
And then they start making a move towards like, hey, let's be more contemporary. And Colton gets recruited by a guy who's really pushing the program in more contemporary ways. And this is a guy who, I met at Priest for Pints, and he was not working for UMHB at the time. And, as I kind of alluded to leading into this, Colton, you described your time there as choose your own adventure. So it sounds like that move to go contemporary didn't work well, and it maybe fell apart a little bit. So what happened?
Let's get into that. Trying to be respectful with names and situations.
If you accidentally slip, we have a bleeper for names too.
Okay, no, I'm good. I'm on my. I'm drinking scotch. I'm good.
Yeah, you're sticking it to the. I'm like the Methodist not drinking here. Cameron, did you switch alcohols? I swear you were drinking out of a glass a minute ago.
Perhaps.
No, I'm glad you said so Cameron and I, we grew up like beat your wife Southern Baptist, but we're Methodist now also. Yeah. So that's been
I really
wait. You wanted to leave dysfunction and you came to our church?
That is not what I thought.
So I do want to get into that, how y'all became Methodist and why I'm at a Reformed church now. But we'll get there. But
they're coming to you next.
So let's why was it a choose your own adventure?
Question. Yeah. So no, that's also the same thing as the Methodist question. That's tying together. Okay. So we'll talk about that. Choose your own adventure, man. And honestly, my memory's a little fuzzy. Props to Humphrey. What a job to take on, man. That was a huge job, and I think he really kicked it. Said it.
I think he was 35.
At the beginning. I honestly don't remember if I had a full year with him or if I had a full year, but I was in my basic music stuff and I didn't get to his stuff until later. But the short version of the story is we showed up my sophomore year or my junior year and he was gone. And I don't know why. There's nothing but rumors. I honestly don't know. Like, I miss him. I wish I could talk to him and catch up. Like, he was just gone. And that's where I'll leave that. I can't
believe there'd be rumors about that. It's just, wow.
Yeah. One of the quirks of that, since he was bringing such an amount of change to the degree, he had reworked the entire course pathway, the entire catalog for all these classes. and he had went to the work of writing a lot of the syllabi himself. He didn't pass that information on. So I was in this track with the registrar to get a 4-year degree in church music, and the rest of the music faculty and the chairman of the music department didn't know what that meant. So many people left the church music degree. I was the only church music graduate my year.
And you came in with a big class.
It was only me by the time we got done. And I went to UMHB for more than 2 semesters with no faculty leadership on my degree. And there's 2 things I'll say about that. One, that was the largest waste of money that I will ever spend in my life because it was extremely unprofessional. The faculty was basically like, yeah, that sucks, doesn't it? And I was like, yeah, it does. Here's $15,000 a semester. But what it did, because it was literally sink or swim, make your own adventure, we really had a voice towards the chairman of the department and towards the faculty about what a church music degree needed to look like in 2018, 2019, 2020, because frankly, they had no idea. And the one guy they brought in that did have an idea is gone. So it was very formative. I almost was teaching myself a lot. And thank God, another shout out, now Dr. Jonathan Gary. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to say everything that yeah, it's fine. We would sit in, since I was the only church music major, and the registrar and the music department didn't know what to do with me. We would just sit in and he would pencil in and make up classes for me to do. And he would get in contact with other church leaders in the area and put me in meetings with them and in ministry positions and find books for me to read. And I would have to write a lot of papers. And he almost made it kind of like master's or doctoral level work individually for me. So was that professional and okay? No. Was it really neat and formative? Yeah, it was, because I basically had to ask myself, like, am I going to do this? Am I really willing to trudge through this and make it work? And it wasn't until my senior year that they hired another faculty to restart the program from the ground up, from that just dumpster fire. It was a dumpster fire surrounded by tires, is what it was, of an academic experience.
And how many of these classes were in presser? I mean, that's just like an extra layer of slap in the face.
Yeah, so just about 100% of them.
Yeah, dude, the joke amongst music
Watch out
majors,
for Clementine.
Yeah.
The joke amongst music majors is that we went to the University of Presser.
Yeah, you don't leave, and you don't meet people outside of Presser. That's your culture. But I did, honestly, I saw the dumpster fire coming down the pipe, and I was smart enough to minor in Christian studies. So I took a lot more classes in Myers and really enjoyed that. Honestly, like, the music was great, but academically, I had my best time in Myers studying with Hood and Kemp and Wyrick.
Yeah.
Dude, Wyrick was awesome.
Leroy.
That was just that was just as formative in my early ministry. Ecclesia.
Ecclesia. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I feel like the drama and fiascos that took place in the music department were kind of like a best kept secret, because, like, some departments you'd hear about it around campus, small school music, like, for example, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, this is more of a question. Like, partying, I feel like those who were not familiar with where the parties actually were just said, oh, the football team parties. And it's true. But I always felt like the most vocal and own it party crowd was the soccer team. The we deny it but are worse than everyone was the Christian studies majors. And
I deny it.
I have gathered that the music department knew how to throw down. We just never heard about it.
Well, that's because
I will not say that told me that, but I will just
The reason you didn't hear about it is because we knew how to throw down. It never became a problem. Party hard, party safe.
So that might be a good segue into this next question I have, which is, so the last episode we interviewed some people who started an underground fraternity, but y'all were technically in a real fraternity.
Bro, you're looking at presidents of the fraternity right here.
Yeah. So tell me about that. What was the deal with that? How'd that get started? What was that like? And what was it exactly?
All right. You want me to start?
Did you beat anyone
it.
with a baseball bat for not memorizing Bible verses?
Okay.
So hold on. Before Cameron starts, let me give a little bit of context.
Okay.
Just those that are unfamiliar with the fraternity or sorority culture at UMHB or the lack thereof. Cameron was my big. He was my big brother. He was the alpha class, the first class on campus. I was the beta class, so I was the first pledged class, and it was the first nationally recognized social fraternity that was allowed to be chartered with the university. Was it second?
Kappa Psi.
Oh, you're right. Okay, second.
And it was music specific?
Music specific.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been around since the late 1800s. It's one of the original 6 East Coast, started in Boston fraternities from the Ivy League schools. Yeah.
So
Boston.
Yeah. So basically, this was at a time, I guess this was before, we really started this before Colton was even there.
Yeah.
The music department at the time was growing, specifically the vocal side of, so within the music school, we have vocalists and instrumentalists, and there's some crossover, but like, not always. And there already was a group, a fraternity called Kappa Psi, which is primarily usually instrumentalists, not necessarily even music majors, but people that play in the pep band or, black shirt crew, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of their big draw. Not always, but most of the time. So they had already been around and kind of had a pretty good grip on the instrumental people, and basically, like, we were growing, and we all have friends at other universities and music schools that were like, yeah, I'm pledging Phi Mu Alpha, like, and we all had kind of heard about it, but we didn't really know what it was. And so this is a true story. This is a little like cinematic, I guess, but we literally had an interest meeting that we held ourselves. We kind of spread the word, told all of the male music majors, vocalists, whatever, that might be interested, that we were going to meet in the old amphitheater. And we met there like around, I don't know, it's getting close to dark, I guess. And me and another guy were kind of spearheading it, and had kind of talked to a few of our other friends about it. And basically we kind of pitched it to everybody, and we were like, look, the school's growing. We need something where we can pour into each other's lives more than just going to class. That's the object of our fraternity, is brotherhood.
Yeah.
And we literally sat around in the amphitheater and talked about it. I had already researched the process to become a chapter at this point, and I was like, look, like, this isn't a joke. Like, if we're gonna do this, if y'all are interested in doing this, it's a really long and arduous process. There are so many steps, there are so many levels of certification and all that kind of stuff like that we have to go through to be an actual chartered, active chapter of Phi Mu Alpha Sinfonia. And basically it was like, hell yeah, let's do it. Like, let's use this time that is going to be all this work to, and really it was a labor of love, like, truly. It was a ton of work. There are so many people that did so many things to make it happen. But the long and the short of it is, we spent the next, I don't know, 6 months drafting letters to like the person over our region, our geographical region of the fraternity. And he basically like sends that on to the national people, and they're like, okay, go check them out. We met with them. And they gave us a bunch of stuff to do. And basically for the next 2 years, we were in a phase called the colony process. So we started this process, and they were like, okay, like you're officially on your path to become a chartered chapter, an active chapter. And, I'm not type A, but I'm very goal oriented. And I was like, okay, I want to know how long this takes.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, if you really do it all right, you could get it done in 2 years, but probably not. Most of the times there's something that doesn't happen right, and you've got to redo something, you've got to reprove something, you've got to whatever. And it usually ends up taking 3 or 4 or 5 years to become an active chapter. And I was like, challenge accepted. And not just me, along with several of my friends, Gerald Nicholas, Terry Livingston, Sam Davis, like Tyler, like we were all in, and we did it. I mean, and the real MVP was Chris Straub. I don't know if y'all know him, but we did it. We did it in 2 years.
Yeah.
And at the time, like they send a bunch of the big dudes down for our initiation. And it was weird because it was like, like the chapter at Baylor was our brother chapter. And really at the time, our colony, our not active chapter yet, was bigger. And like, a lot of the time at these other schools, there's still a lot of instrumental people. And we were really different in that our chapter was almost 100% vocalist. And dude, we used Phi Mu Alpha as a place to groom our leadership skills amongst each other, and then also a time to refine our skills as musicians with each other.
Yeah.
Like we literally just use it as a lab choir. Like we had to put on our own concerts every semester. So we picked our own music and we taught it, and we didn't like BS around with it. Like when we ran rehearsals, it was like we were serious about it. And honestly, I still like some of the recordings from our concerts. I'm like, dude, like we sound better than a lot of things I've heard in
That's cool.
Maybe a lot better than some of the stuff I was a part of in college.
Well, I gotta say, one of the coolest things was at Colton's wedding. Like all of a sudden, all of y'all guys like came out into the middle and put on like this. I don't know if it was impromptu. Maybe y'all had planned it, but It felt very impromptu. Like I was in the middle of a musical and everyone starts just singing and knowing the words. Yeah. It was super cool. Yeah, it was awesome.
Like we've done that at everybody's wedding.
That's awesome.
Like all of our fraternity brothers, that anybody that's a brother, we do that at. Yeah, we sing that.
Yeah,
and then we sing a song at the end.
So a question I have is, I guess it's been how many years since y'all graduated? About 10 years. So I guess it's safe to ask, what is the most like frat-like old school thing that would have been frowned upon that y'all did?
We didn't, dude.
Really?
We didn't.
I don't believe you.
Honest truth. So like not long before we started the colony process. Now, some of our music professors were in Phi Mu Alpha when they were in college, and some of the stories they had were like Animal House.
Yeah.
Like paddles, holding a match, having to recite the Greek alphabet before it gets down to your fingers. There was a long-standing tradition in Phi Mu Alpha that if you were a pledge, you had to sing the worm song at any given time. Basically, it was a song where you're like, I'm a worm. But no, really, like not long before we started, they they like stopped playing with that stuff on a national level.
Okay.
And they expelled, I think, 4 or 5 chapters while we were in the process of becoming a chapter for hazing.
Oh, that's
so
fun.
it was like, okay, well, and also like the UMHB, you know, they were all like super worried about it too. So
Shocker.
we honestly and truly, we were so like driven with getting this done as soon as we could and accomplishing that goal that we truly did not have time for foolishness.
That makes sense.
And there were people that started the colony process with us that didn't finish it because we're like, no, like, get out. Like, if you're not in this all the way, like, we don't want you here. You know, so we really didn't. I'm not saying we didn't do other stuff outside of, I mean, like, we were all fraternity brothers. Like, you know, I'm not saying we didn't have extravaganzas, but they were not necessarily like, it wasn't like Phi Mu Alpha's throwing a party. It was like,
Right.
So Colton, you were the first class to rush, correct?
Yeah.
What was that like, Colton?
Yeah, beta class. Man, honestly, it was awesome, and I can't reiterate more what Cameron said. You know, my leadership skills and a whole lot of what I bring to the table in my professional life is directly linked to Phi Mu Alpha. And honestly, it was because there was zero faculty involvement. And what you got out of it was a direct correlation to how hard you worked.
Yeah.
So the onus was on you. It was very, very formative. Yeah, so being the first pledge class, rush class, got a big brother. So my big brother was Cameron, which was really neat. It was just one-on-one. Every pledge, I was pledged, correct me if I'm wrong, Cameron, there were 4 others. Myself, Cardarius Bonner, Justin Dismuke, Cody Goo.
That was it.
Just 4 of us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So we got a big brother, and I guess I can talk about the process a little bit without giving away secrets. So you're a pledge for a whole year.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Oh, it's a actually secret fraternity.
That's cool.
It is in the dictionary as a secret fraternity. Yeah, there are secrets.
That's exciting.
Oh yeah,
Tyler, you would love it, dude.
Yeah, very
well. Other than the fact that I have zero musical talent, so
it doesn't matter, and that's the wonderful thing about Phi Mu Alpha. You don't have to be a music major.
Really,
it's just for it's for the betterment of. I haven't said it in so long. I can't remember. It's basically like for dudes that love music and want brotherhood. Like,
that's cool.
But like seriously, we had plenty of non-majors that were involved with it.
Yeah.
The values that you hold dear, Tyler, would fit so well, and even just what Phi Mu Alpha stands for.
That's awesome.
Very, very good stuff. Yeah. So there was like kind of an academic process. Like you got that
long view
called Themes of Brotherhood, and you had to study the book. Can you guys hear me at all?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So you got a book. It was called Themes of Brotherhood, and it was full of things that you had to study. So things like the Greek alphabet. That's not really a secret. The history of the fraternity is huge. You have to know why it was founded, where it was founded, the history leading up to where we are now, over 100 years later. And you had to be tested on it. And then there was an initiation period. It was not a one-night thing. It was a whole semester. You had like a semester of prep for initiation, and then you had a semester of initiation. And that's where the secrets were. Multiple evenings of secrets, and then at the end, one large evening of secrets. And then at the end of that process, you were considered a brother, and you did the handshake, and you changed your pin from a pledge pin to an actual pin, which we all have, and still technically wear sometimes when we wear formal wear a certain place. the biggest, oh my God, the biggest shout out, the Sinfonia. So it's Phi Mu Alpha, but it's also called Sinfonia. So we're called Sinfonians. The most famous Sinfonian is Mr. Rogers.
Really? That's amazing. Oh, I love that.
Also famous
Hero.
Sinfonians, J.K. Simmons is also a Sinfonian.
Cool.
Yeah, so I could have walked up to Mr. Rogers on the street and said the secret and did the secret handshake, and we would have had a shared collegiate experience, almost by the book.
By the book,
same.
yeah.
So like when he changed his shoes, was that like a secret handshake, or was?
No, that was
y'all didn't come in and like change your clothes and put on a cardigan. That wasn't. No.
That is not the secret.
Yeah. The president says it's a beautiful day, and everyone has to say in the neighborhood.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're getting this.
I'm gonna hope that's true. And one thing we ask all guests, and you may have just answered. So we ask everybody, what was your favorite thing you were a part of, and something you wish you'd been more a part of? Would y'all say that was the thing you were most glad to be a part of?
I would say that is tied with. I loved my time in One Voice. That was very formative for me as a musician. Matt Crosby put up with me and taught me so much more than I ever thought I could learn. And like, I got to travel the world twice, that, and then yeah, I would say being in Phi Mu Alpha, those, and there are to me, a lot of similarities in the two. There very much is a fraternal aspect to what made One Voice special to what made Phi Mu Alpha special.
Cool.
So,
is the fraternity still going on strong at UMHB? No.
That's a whole question.
Oh no. Oh,
can we ask it?
I mean, you can. Yeah, like
what happened?
It's been. There just haven't been. Multiple. Yeah, it's a multi-layer question, but
being very passionate about leading an organization that you give your all to, and then seeing it fall apart as you leave. Me and Garrett know nothing
at all
what y'all are talking about.
Yeah, I was only around for 20 years. Oh, I don't think people are interested.
I mean, we went back. When was that? I don't know. 2 years after. No, I wasn't. I don't know if I was married yet. Maybe a year. My first year teaching, and like things were not really good. And I can't remember who reached out. Maybe one of the faculty, but like we basically, and Colton, correct me if I'm wrong, but we kind of showed up at their meeting, and we're like, so what the hell's been going on? And kind of tried to like give him a kick in the pants, and that worked for a little while, but there haven't. I don't think there's been enough consistent male involvement.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think just regardless of how well it was functioning and how well we left it, the number of men being heavily recruited in the vocal department did nothing but decline.
And I think at some level, like we ran a tight ship because it was special to us. We started it, and it was like, I think once the last people from the Alpha class were gone, it's like, I think that there were some really great people that really cared about Phi Mu Alpha and really tried to keep it going.
Yeah.
But I think that there were a lot of people that just kind of were like, yeah, Phi Mu Alpha, like I'm being fraternity, like whatever. And it wasn't that we were serious about it. Like it was not a joke. Like if people were missing meetings, like we were calling dudes and giving them the what for. Like that was I was the founding president, and every Sunday afternoon, I knew I was going to have to lay into somebody because they were going to try and call me and tell me they couldn't come to the meeting. Mm-hmm. I got homework. And I was like, I don't give a damn. Like, be there. We all got stuff to do.
Well, I feel I left 8 years of working in higher ed for student orgs this past year, and I don't miss trying to coerce Gen Z students to care enough to show up to any given meeting.
Cool.
I think that's part of it too. It's a as close as we are, it's still very different.
Yeah.
In the generation.
All right, so the final thing I want to ask y'all about, I want to ask y'all about by way of a story of my own. So I came to UMHB. I was not a Baptist, but I was very much a part of a fundamentalist church. And I love them to death. They're great people. They did a lot for my faith development. But at the same time, they also were very weary of just education in general. I had people just straight up warning me, like, yeah, well, be careful, like, about like losing your faith by going to seminary and whatnot. And so I kind of came in with that weary attitude, extremely conservative in multiple ways, theologically, politically. And what was funny, I noticed something in myself. So maybe they were right in some ways, but I don't think right the way they thought they were right. And also other ministry majors, which is by the time I was graduating, my final paper was about anti-intellectualism. And that was my capstone kind of big thing I had to do, was about anti-intellectualism in the American church.
Yeah.
And how it kind of grew, it, came through fundamentalism. And then I even had a paper right there at the end too, about how like the arguments in Corinthians that Paul was talking about stemmed from economic inequality. And so, it's sort of funny that I can be at this Baptist school and I can come out, and it is very conservative. The first church I ever worked out that Colton did too, one person once asked me, how did you survive with all those liberals at UMHB? And I'm like, oh, dude, what in the world? But, so I came out of that still working in a Baptist church. But even then, I was still evolving from really, I think, a lot of the discipleship I received from my professors, where I just realized a lot of the things that I thought were intricately connected to what it meant to be a Christian were actually not that case at all and were detrimental to my faith. And me and Colton kind of experienced that really crazy American blended with, politics, Christianity at our first church. And so now I'm not a Baptist anymore. I work at a historically reformed church. We are fairly theologically conservative, but like not like a Baptist by any means. And so neither of y'all are Baptist anymore either. Y'all are both Methodist. Garrett came in Methodist and left Methodist.
I left more Methodist. No. I came in Methodist and left more Methodist.
Got it.
There's like a little circle of Methodists at you. Like I know
there were 6 when I was, or 7. No, we got up to 7 by my senior year. See, I could count on one hand. We knew who each other were.
So this is open ended, but I want to throw it up to both of y'all. I think y'all both kind of went under a little bit of a transformation yourself. Through your time at UMHB, and you're no longer Baptist, and I would say probably neither of you are Baptist for a reason. So whoever wants to jump at this first, Colton, go for it. Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word detrimental to my faith. Just really starting intense. So. The reason I want to go first, I actually just did like basically like a sermonette, like a homily on this for my UMC church. About a month ago, we had a retreat, and we're changing kind of the structure of our curriculum at our church from the ground up. We're going through a pastor transition, and they basically, the question was, we want to know what a millennial has to say about the importance of discipleship. And Tyler, this is the book that I sent you called Learning to Speak God from Scratch, from the writer from The Atlantic. He partnered with Barna Research Group, and I'll spoil it for you and everyone listening on the podcast. The most religiously affiliated, do you go to church, was the question, matched with the age of the population. So the older you were, the more religiously affiliated you were. And then they asked the question, how many spiritual conversations are you having per year? And the graph mirror image changed. And the most religiously affiliated Christians were having 0 to 2 spiritual conversations in 1 year. And millennials, the least religiously affiliated, the least church, were having anywhere from 10 to 50 spiritual conversations per year. That's a fascinating trend. So I don't think the future of the church is doom and gloom. I think the Trinity is dancing in different spaces. And if we're going to pray for revival, we need to have the eyes to look for it outside of institutionalized megachurch 90s capitalism Christianity.
So
But
you
anyway,
left the Baptist
part of my-
church because you believe that the Trinity is allowed to dance. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So we came in, and not in my class, but in the 4 years I was there was around 12 church music majors. And a majority of us came in, like you said, Tyler, if it wasn't Southern Baptist, it was pretty damn close. Fundamentalist, evangelical, white Republican Jesus, whatever. You know exactly the culture I'm talking about. And I counted 12. 10 of them, including myself and Cameron, are now mainline Protestants. Only 2 of them remained in evangelical traditions. There is a Presbyterian, 2 Anglicans, 1 is ordained, and 7 Methodists.
That's we win.
So that trend is not unique. I almost feel like it is the same exact story that I hear from any millennial that is still giving the church a chance. You know, I think a lot of people want to burn the ship down completely. Some people want to just fire the crew and turn the ship around. Those people all have such a similar story. So I'm always blessed when I hear that, because it gives me hope that the church might be seeking unity instead of uniformity.
I'm glad you mentioned the ship, because we're not like that in the Methodist.
So yeah.
Oh, he was still going. Long view.
We thought you were done. You were frozen.
No, you talking about the ship sinking. In the Methodist church, we're like the Titanic, you know, but we're doing that thing where like it broke in 2 pieces. So there's going to be like 2 of us.
That's a good analogy.
I like to tell people, yeah, I joke, I'm a Methodist. No, I'm Wesleyan, and I make up my own mind, you know, but
yeah,
free will for life.
Good point. That's coming. We'll see. They pushed it back 3 times now.
Yep.
Man, the short answer, I want to make sure that Cameron has enough time to talk. Man, the short answer is I was from that tradition that was anti-intellectual and fundamentalist, and I got an education that was at a theologically conservative university. You know, they just taught you how to think, basically, and just sprinkled in a little hermeneutic, and you'd be amazed at what happens. And then serving in that tradition for 3 years, I went back and served. So yeah, let me break this down. Actually, I'll do it very quickly. So I was raised that way. During college, I worked for Cameron at Troy United Methodist Church and got to experience mainline Protestantism as I was getting my education. And I was like, yep, I'm sold. Let's do it. But then my first church being on staff was my senior year for my internship. And then I stayed on for 2 years. And that was where I met Tyler at the Southern Baptist Evangelical Church. So going through that process, shout out to, and again, like, this is way less about that church and more about my personal journey. Their relationship at that church in Killeen, they're beautiful. And that time was so integral to how I do ministry. Like, that was a huge learning place
100%.
in my life. But part of that learning was, this is not where I am sociopolitically. This is not where I am theologically. This is not where I am in a Christology, all of it, all the ologies. And so for the same exact reason that I think a lot of people are leaving the church that are millennials, period, is the same reason I'm a United Methodist now. I'm looking for that spiritual curiosity and the beauty of liturgy, and trying to find where God really is outside of the weird, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, John Wayne Republican stuff, because I'm in love with the gospel and Jesus. Like, that's not going to change, but I'm trying to figure out how to clean it up and get some of the idolatry out of there a little bit, which I'm not saying I have it all figured out by any means. I obviously am worshiping idols too. I don't worship Fox News, so I wasn't super comfortable at a Southern Baptist church.
Yeah. Cool. Cameron?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of like Colton did, I want to preface like everything that my own journey, there's a lot of layers to it.
Yeah.
Both my wife and I are pastors' kids. And you know, there's a lot that comes with that. And you know, my parents they're the best people that I know, and I would not change anything about the way that I was raised. They modeled Christ's love in their marriage for each other. They still do, in some of the truest form of being servants to each other. And I've watched my dad serve people, because that's what he feels called to do. And truly, like, he modeled that so well, his work ethic, his desire to do his best because he feels called to do his best. Those are things that, like, man, if I could be half that whenever I'm 63 or 64, he just turned whatever, shout out dad, happy birthday last week. Man, I'd be thrilled. You know, so I think it's more, my journey is not, I want to be clear that, like, it's not my change in my personal theological beliefs has nothing to do. It's not like my parents beat me over the head with a Bible until I was ready to leave the church or anything like that. You know, but I think at the same time, I mean, and a lot of the things that Tyler, both you and Colton have, you know, said. So the church I grew up in Pflugerville is Southern Baptist of Texas, just like the Skyline in Killeen. You know, so I think it was more one of those things that, like, once I was no longer there were things that I kind of started to be like, you know, I don't know about that. You know, like, I mean, Tyler, like, you were joking, like, about people being like, you're gonna go to the liberal school. Like, I was literally sat down by some church leadership before I went to UMHB and was like, you need to be aware that they're liberal. You know, and, you know, I don't know if y'all know about the whole, like, there was a whole thing of, like, who was going to fund Southern Baptist schools at some point, and the BGCT, you know, won that for, I don't know all the details, but, like, you know, that's kind of where I come from. You know, very, you know, I feel like the word fundamentalist has some negative connotations to it. I don't like to use that word necessarily, but I mean, and my dad and I were talking, you know, just the other week, like, they are conservative and they have no problem with that. Like, that is who they are. And to some extent, I appreciate that about them. Like, there's no beating around the bush. But Mark Aaron really kind of started, I had some baggage in my own life from just being in church and working in churches from the time I left, you know, from the time I left home, that I was a little
Mark Aaron is the guy that you met, Tyler, Dr. Humphrey.
Dr. Humphrey, sorry. I was already kind of a little jaded, maybe in some ways. And, you know, like, for an illustration, there was some cracks in the walls and he just took a sledgehammer and, like, knocked them down. You know, so many of my classes with him were super small, You know, there were 2 or 3 of us, maybe. And he didn't have time for BS. Like, he was not there for us to play the church game. Like, he literally was like, you're not allowed to use Christianese in my class.
Cool.
And
Professional.
and I literally, and so much of like the answers that I started to give, he'd be like, no, I want to know what you think. Like, and it took me a while to try and like decipher between the two, of just like things that I just like said, because that was, you know, I'd just been around it for forever culturally.
I think what all 3 of us that I heard seems like have in common is we really appreciate a lot of the things that we were given and what we were raised in, and we take some of that with us still.
Yeah, absolutely.
But whereas I see all the time, people seeing hypocrisy and just things that they can't abide by, that are really wrapped up in certain strands of Christianity, and so they just leave it all together. They throw the baby out with the bathwater. Whereas we and many other people I know too, going, okay, I'm going to take this, but I'm going to go somewhere a little bit different, where I still have, for me anyway, I'll speak for myself, really the fundamentals of what I was raised with. But the focus in a lot of the focus in a lot of the Baptist churches I've been in, and just fundamentalist churches in general, is not where I want to have my focus. My focus is not on critical race theory. It's not.
Dare you?
Yeah. My focus is on serving people and sharing love. Can you, am I frozen?
I hear him.
I don't know.
I can
lost
hear
everybody for a second.
Okay.
See, you brought up critical race theory and everything just went down the drain. Way to go, Tyler.
Yeah.
Wow. Good job.
My point being is that, not that I think everything they do is bad, and I throw away all of that, but it's just my focus of what I feel like my faith should be centered around is not that's what the things that are important to them a lot of times are not what's important.
Right. And I think for me personally, like, Mark Aaron really started to force me to think for myself. And then at the same time, the experiences that I was having, I mean, I interned at First Baptist in Belton. And like, I just, you know, I really didn't like it very much. You know, I didn't feel like I was really discipled. The people were nice, but like, I was there for an internship, and, you know, it was kind of like, yeah, more so like my job was to file music and do those kinds of grunt work things, which, like, I don't have a problem doing, but it just kind of further jaded me, I think, at that time. And at the same time, I'm being challenged within my coursework. And really the final kind of like nail in the coffin that really, Dr. Carroll, I don't know if, Tyler, you took anything with him. Man, I love that dude. I can't even remember what the name of the class. It was one of the last classes I took at UMHB. Designing and facilitating worship, maybe something. There weren't a whole lot of us in there. And he literally, like, he presented the whole spectrum from uber progressive to uber fundamental, and was like, here's the spectrum. And he, in a completely unbiased way, presented that and encouraged us to truly ask questions within ourselves, within the stuff we were reading, of like, where do you feel called? Like, where do you feel is like you need to be? And, you know, like, he really, I felt like, gave me the freedom to, and I don't even know if I really realized it at the time, because I was working at a church in Morgan's Point, which, I mean, you talk about like, it's like a caricature of Baptist things. But my internship was ending there, so I took this job in Troy, and at the time it was like I needed a job. Like I had rent to pay, like my internship was ending. I was about to get engaged, you know, and so I took this job in Troy for a woman pastor. And like if 18-year-old Cameron could see himself, and the truth is at the time, I don't know how I felt about it at the time. I truly was like, I don't know, maybe I'll do this for a while just to kind of get by. And like, dude, I mean, God like punched me in the face and was like, hey, I worked at churches all through my college time, 5 years. And that was the first time I had been pastored by anybody.
Wow.
Woo.
So much, and to a level that nobody had discipled me. Nobody had been a pastor like that to me, really, that I had at that point in my life. And I was like, oh my, like it changed my world, you know, and opened my eyes, I think, to things that I thought and had been raised with that I no longer identified with. I just maybe didn't know it.
Yeah.
And part of that's also, you know, again, like I said, my wife, like what are the odds that two Baptist pastors' kids end up together, you know, in a marriage? And she was like, I don't ever want to be a minister. I don't want to, she didn't want to have anything to do with that because we both had baggage. And our Methodist church pretty quickly, I mean, was a place of healing for both of us, truly. And, you know, like, I mean, I'm trying not to like get emotional about, I mean, like really, like we both had experienced things that suck, that when you live behind the Iron Curtain.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think for me, like one thing that's huge with Wesleyanism is the word reason, you know, the Wesleyan quadrilateral, like the fact that we're allowed, like thinking is encouraged. And it's also goes hand in hand with tradition. You know, a tradition that, you know, really reaches back past what, you know, the Methodist church to the Anglican church, you know, to something much, you know, and I found comfort in being a part of a global denomination. And I know, and not that the Baptist church is not, it is, it's a huge global denomination. But I found something, I think, richer in, you know, like I know that there are people every first Sunday taking communion with me, like in Methodist churches across the world, you know, and that kind of, you know, commonality that you find, I think, in mainline Protestant churches was huge for me. Things like saying the Apostles' Creed every Sunday, like those are huge things for me. And between that and really starting my teaching career and finding that I actually was probably a racist, you know what, like I had a lot of prejudices and things that I didn't think I was, or that, but between the work that was happening in me, like from within my church, within what I'm being pastored with at a Methodist church, like we're talking about these things, you know, and then what I'm seeing at a public school that I'm teaching at, like, man, I was like, dude, I got stuff I need to deal with, and I need to, I've like felt convicted about, you know, so I think, you know, Colton kind of talked a little bit about the socio-political stuff. The longer that I've been out of the Baptist church, the more that that's become something that, you know, has changed for me. And the two are married in my opinion, for me, you know, and yeah, I think that I don't want to get like all, I know Colton talked about drop the CRT bomb, but you know, like we we talk about those things.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, you know, we never talked about that stuff growing up. You know, it was like, yeah, don't be racist. But it was never like, what
What does that mean?
What does that look like? Well, yeah, I'm not in the KKK, so I'm not a racist. You know, like, I mean, so like those are things that I hope, like, for my own daughter, like, that I hope that she has to think about, you know, at some point before, you know, what that really looks like for her. And hopefully, and again, I don't want to imply that, like, my upbringing, you know, was like you know, my anything like that. But, you know, those are the kinds of things that the longer I've been in the Methodist Church, I appreciate not being afraid to tackle some of those issues head on and to challenge us as believers as to, like, what are we really doing to make this stuff better?
For sure.
And if you're not taking an active role, you're actually not helping.
Yeah.
You know, and so, like, those are all things like that have been really, have been a big change within me. And I've really felt challenged, but also felt, you know, I found a home within the Wesleyan tradition.
It's cool. Very cool. Well, we like to wrap up each episode with some rapid fire questions. So Garrett, you want to throw them at him?
Sure. I mean, we started on one of them earlier and never got through. So favorite tradition or thing you were part of and one you wish you had taken more part of?
Favorite tradition was definitely the fraternity, Phi Mu Alpha. A tradition that I wish I did more. Yeah, man, I didn't really care about a whole lot.
No.
So sleep. I don't know. The music program was enough, man. It kept us busy.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Yeah, it's people. The only thing that we can compare it to is probably nursing. It's just an all-encompassing, like, a fully immersive experience if you're gonna do it right.
Yeah. So this next question, I think, is going to be truly hilarious for Colton, because I am almost certain he will be the only person in the history of this podcast who literally cannot answer it. So the other rapid fire question we have is, what is your favorite sports memory that you have at UMHB? Colton, do you have a single sports memory?
Make one up, if not.
No, I don't got no damn sports memory, dude. I don't. No.
Not even your school won 2 national titles and you can brag that.
In what?
How do you kick people off of here? I'm trying to find the button.
I guess the first football game and the only and last football game was the first one in the new stadium. I got a little towel.
There you go. Everyone's got one. Everyone's got
the yellow
one.
towel.
Little yellow towel. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Cameron. What about you?
I mean, like, I went to a bunch of football games and that was fun. I'm trying to remember, was the first national? I think I was already graduated.
It was 2016.
Yeah, I was out. But when I was there, when the men's basketball went to the Final Four, Thomas Orr and Brian Todd were on the team, and Brian went to high school with me, and Thomas and I were in elementary school together. So that was cool that they did that. And I think Thomas is back at UMHB.
Yeah, coaching.
I think I saw that on his Facebook status a couple days ago. It was like new adventure or something like that.
Yeah, when Cliff Carroll, the new basketball coach, when he got hired, he was one of the first assistants he brought on.
My buddies and I, we would frequently go to basketball games and be like one of like 37 people there. And there was a redheaded dude that was on the basketball, white dude, redheaded guy, and we affectionately referred to him as the professor. A recall to the And One mixtape era of there was a white dude who was always really good at crossing everybody up. So we referred to that guy, that he was like UMHB's the professor.
I love it. Well,
I've always
thank
wondered
you.
what it'd go like if we asked everyone their worst sports memory, but I'm afraid I would be the answer to a lot of
Yeah,
people the further we go in.
Probably would
So-
be.
The guy with the couch.
Well, thank y'all so much for coming on. This was an amazing conversation. I think it hit on a lot of my favorite subjects, which is why I wanted y'all on. That was good. I'm excited for that we
Hopefully.
were able to get this done.
Hopefully you can use some of this.
Well, sweet. That was a fun episode. Thanks to Colton and Cameron for coming on. And it's 9:48 p.m. and HSU still
Sucks.
sucks.